This week, I'm on a solo bird walk that I recorded at Malibu Lagoon in California back in June 2018. There's also news about the Casual Birder podcast team taking part in the Global Big Day on May the 8th. And episode 100 is coming, and I tell you how you can get involved. Welcome to the Casual Birder podcast. I'm Suzy Buttress. As a casual birder, I take time to watch birds as I go about my daily tasks. In my show, I'll tell you about the wild birds I've seen, speak with other enthusiasts, take bird walks, and share stories from listeners around the world. In case you missed it, last episode I told you about 13 of my regular garden birds, what they look like, how they sound, and some observations of their behaviour that I've noticed. Do take a listen. This episode is brought to you by Casual Birder Weekly, the show's newsletter. Although I connect with you in lots of places, the show's Facebook group, Instagram, Twitter, our contact is fragmented. The newsletter is a great way for us all to stay in touch. Each week, I share exclusive updates and videos about the birds I've seen, tips to help you get the best birding experiences, recommendations for other podcasts or books I've enjoyed, and I let you know about any planned group birdwatch events. Sign up now. The link is in the episode notes. In June 2018, I was incredibly fortunate to be able to spend 10 days on vacation in Los Angeles, California. I only had a few days at the beach side of LA before heading off inland to Lake Arrowhead for a podcast convention. It was my second day in Los Angeles, and I planned to spend it doing some casual birding, exploring at my own pace and seeing what birds were around. I had found out about Malibu Lagoon the previous day when visiting the grounds of the Adamson House Museum with friends. Shout out to Aileen, Steve and Charlotte. The Adamson House Museum is a beautiful site, great for taking in views of the Pacific Ocean and seeing birds in the gardens. It's on the eastern shore of Malibu Lagoon, and at one point we were looking across the lagoon at some water birds in the distance. I asked one of the docents there about the birds I was seeing, and they recommended visiting the boardwalk area on the other side of the lagoon as a relatively easy place to see brown pelicans. I had intended to spend a full day at Malibu Lagoon, but jet lag overtook me. After sitting for an hour or so during the morning in the garden of the Airbnb where I was staying, listening to the northern mockingbirds and watching dark-eyed juncos bathing in a water feature, I had to admit defeat and go back to bed. By the time I finally got out to Malibu, it was after 3 p.m. and a surprisingly overcast afternoon. I guess I expected LA to always have blue skies. At this small reserve, a boardwalk and trail runs alongside a small lagoon that is fed by seawater at high tide. There are picnic benches, interpretive signs and artwork dotted along the walkways, which lead down to the beach and the Pacific Ocean. I took a slow walk alongside the lagoon towards the ocean, stopping along the way whenever I heard or saw a bird. So it's Monday afternoon and I'm at Malibu Lagoon. It's late afternoon and there's lots of bugs around. I've put bug repellent on, but they're all in my face. Just heard a song sparrow. Seen a crow, American crow I guess. Cormorant just flew over, but I didn't get to see quite what it was. Might be able to hear that song sparrow calling in the background. Pretty sure that's a song sparrow. We saw them yesterday and they have a spot on their chest, and I think that's quite indicative. Some very nice properties on my right hand side on the, I can't remember what they called it, the Malibu Enclave, something like that. Aha, right, I think the cormorant is in the water. Let's have a look. No, he's just dived. Oh, actually, it might have been a grebe. Let's see when he comes up again. There's some brown pelican that have been flying over. Oh, there he is. Nope, it's cormorant. Looks like our cormorant, but I'd need to check for sure. I can see a great white egret down at the spit of land. There's a lot of brown pelicans down the end, so I'm going to go down there and see if I can see them. Quite a few gulls, so I might be lucky, might be able to identify some of them. So, a couple of corrections. In fact, it's Malibu Colony, not Malibu Enclave. And that was a double-crested cormorant, which does look similar to the great cormorant that I'm used to seeing in the UK. A couple of ducks flying through, can't tell for sure what they are. We saw some gadwall yesterday when we were at the Adamson house. There's a couple of swallows flying around, really beautiful, very red breasts and black heads from what I can see. Looks like a great black-backed gull flying past, but I'm guessing that's not what that is. Could be a Californian gull maybe. Had a call a bit like a herring gull, but much darker wings. It actually was a western gull. Luckily I took a photograph of it, and on examination I could see that the eye had a thin yellow border, the bird's wings were dark, and it had pinkish legs. And most likely that was a barn swallow I saw flying. It's the same species as the swallows I see flying in England during the summer, but the subspecies we see has white underparts, while the American subspecies is much redder below. That was the feature that stood out to me as I looked for key identification points. So we're coming into what I think is sage scrub, possibly. Some sort of succulent looking plant. Oh, excellent, got a little bird calling out. Now this looks like the bush tit that I thought I saw yesterday. Remind me of the long-tailed tit. We have grey backs, brown heads, soft little faces. There was a flock of around 9 bush tits busily searching through the branches of the low shrubs looking for insects. They were constantly on the move, calling to each other as they went. I didn't see the second bird that was calling, but found out later using BirdNet that it was a spotted Toei, which is in the New World sparrow family. In fact, later in the trip I saw this species several times, despite the fact that they usually prefer to stay hidden, and I became more familiar with their calls. I read on a sign that snowy plovers breed on the beach, and a section had been cordoned off and reserved for them, so I would be sure to look out for those. Following the path to the beach, I walked along the sand for a little way, then turned to face away from the ocean and looked across the lagoon to the small islands dotted around. So I've now come down to a beach area, which I'm going to walk along, see if there's any... Oh, there's definitely gulls. Interesting markings, but I'm going to have a little check them out. Don't really want to get sand in my shoes, but I might not get much choice. Oh, fantastic. We've got some sort of curlew type thing. Okay, so let's see what we can see in terms of pelican. Got a group of wading birds there. I'll look at those in the binoculars in a second. Heron, cormorants, gulls, brown pelican. A load of waders have just come in. My first scan of the islands revealed brown pelicans at the far end of the beach, cormorants, gulls and egrets in the mid-distance, and a cluster of wading birds nearer to me. I struggle with identifying wading birds, but I was determined to take my time with these ones and look for the identifying features. I also photographed them so that I had further opportunity to identify them when I had access to the internet. So the first group of wading birds have very long beaks. They're a kind of buff colour. They have slightly upturned beaks. They're pinky with black tips. And then these smaller birds have come in. And they've got black beaks with a white flash on their wings, much more slender. Looks like there's a couple of little egrets and a couple of great egrets. I mentioned seeing little egrets and great egrets. I found out later that the smaller egrets were snowy egrets, which are closely related to little egrets. Little egrets are generally found on my side of the Atlantic, though they have started breeding in the Caribbean. A couple of rabbits have just turned up. Oh, and I can see a small plover. A couple of pelicans just took off. Flew right past me. That would have been lovely if I was a better photographer. Oh, we've got a small phoebe, I think, has just landed in the tree next to us. Wish I could see which bird it is that's piping. The bird that was piping was, according to BirdNet, a whimbrel. These look very similar to Eurasian curlews, a tall, long-legged wader with a long, down-curved bill, which is what I had originally identified them as. I should have realised that they didn't sound like Eurasian curlews, which have a very distinctive call that I heard a lot on Orkney and in Shetland when I was there. Thank goodness for BirdNet. At the time, it was quite hard to see which bird was actually calling. Well, I've just looked up snowy plover and they are very pretty, very pale, quite tiny, so I'll see if I can see any of those. Oh, curlews look like they're back. Well, they're very squeaky. So that was them taken off again. Ah, so those possibly are bar-tailed godwits, which have, the females have a pink beak with a black tip, and it's slightly upturned. Oh, there's a marbled godwit, which could also be. Using my bird ID apps and confirming with the video and photographs I'd taken, I was later able to identify the first groups of waders, the ones with long pinky beaks with black upturned tips, as marbled godwits. The other smaller birds that flew in, the ones with smaller straight black beaks and white flashes on the wings, were willets. Both of these birds were lifers for me. So that's a tern, but I think it's a pretty big tern. That crack call came from the Caspian tern, which is the largest tern in the world, and very striking. It's similar in size to the bigger gulls, and it has a thick pointed red bill, which aids identification. Like a duck with some ducklings. It's possibly a gadwall. But they helped me spot a little ringed plover, I think. It's either a little ringed plover nearby or a killdeer. I don't know how big they are. I can definitely see a beautiful gadwall. And earlier I saw some snowy egrets. So I think they're the godwits. Willets, not godwits. I think that little plaintive noise you can hear is the snowy plover. I didn't realise there was one on the nest and it's quite close. So I'm actually going to move away. They really are tiny little birds. Not much bigger than ducklings. Snowy plovers are tiny, about the size of house sparrows. They're really well camouflaged against sandy beaches and only really noticeable because of their stop-start running movements. This species is endangered, and because their nests are also nearly invisible against the sand, areas of the beach had been fenced off to protect them from dogs and people using the beach. The nests were protected by cage and fencing, but it was only after I'd been standing there for a while that I realised what I was seeing. At first, I thought it was just discarded fishing equipment on the beach. Ooh, crow's just turned up. Is it a crow? Oh no, it's a grackle, I think. It's got beautiful colouring. Yeah, I think. Could it be a boat-tailed grackle? It's got beautiful fan tail, pale eyes, beautiful blue colour on its back. It was a great-tailed grackle. It only stayed a minute or so, foraging for food before flying off. But I was very pleased to see it. Great-tailed grackles are found in south central and southwestern states and into Mexico. So although I thought it was a boat-tailed grackle, they're only found in eastern North America. But at that time, I'd only heard of common grackles and boat-tailed grackles. So it was good to add another species to my mental encyclopedia. Gosh, the temperature's dropping quite a bit. Wow. Totally different type of tern. They're a really tiny one. So what I can tell you about those ones, apart from the fact they're tiny compared to the big ones I saw earlier, they have a black cap. They actually seem to have a pretty black head, yellow beak, white forehead. They're white, but I feel like they've got darker edges to the fronts of the wings and little swallowtails. They're very pretty, just extremely quick. The tiny tern was tricky to identify. It was moving in a very floaty, tern-like way and hard to get a good look at with my binoculars. BirdNet identified the call as a least tern, the smallest of the North American terns. So something's calling really close by, but I can't tell what on earth it is. I suppose it could be a plover. Right. I suppose I better head on. It's just all too exciting. For that June afternoon, there was a wonderful collection of birds. Even though I couldn't identify everything, I either knew the different bird groups or I likened them to more familiar birds so that I could at least try to narrow down the species. The waders are generally long-legged birds, often with a long beak that they use to probe the mud and sand for worms and other invertebrates, but they can be really tricky to identify as they often have brown speckled plumage and look very alike. That's when you need to look for more detailed characteristics such as an upturned or down-curved beak, the leg colour, or behaviours to help narrow down the identification. It's possible that I saw 3 different types of tern: Caspian, elegant and least. The Caspian tern was very big and noticeable, especially with the loud call. The smaller ones were a bit more tricky. Having binoculars helped, but you do really need to note down the characteristics of each bird to help with ID later. I relied on my voice description, but the species are so similar that I didn't necessarily record the features required for identification. Birds that I identified were song sparrow, American crow, barn swallow, mourning dove, which I heard, double-crested cormorant, bush tit, elegant tern, I think, least tern, Caspian tern, black phoebe, great-tailed grackle, great blue heron, great egret, snowy egret, Californian brown pelican, ring-billed gull, western gull, gadwall, killdeer, snowy plover, willet, marbled godwit, and whimbrel. Oh, and there were also some rabbits, which reminded me more of UK hares than our rabbits, and I think they were Californian desert cottontail rabbits. So of that list of 23 birds, I had 10 lifers. So that was pretty amazing. And I know a lot more about Californian birds now, so I'd love to go back someday and increase that list. The Global Big Day on May the 8th, 2021 is fast approaching. I'm really proud that the Casual Birder podcast has put forward a team to take part in the Global Big Day. It's a wonderful way to share your local birds, have fun birding as part of a virtual team, and take part in community science. We'll all be birding in our own locations, but our lists will be shared to the team account so that we can have a combined total of species for the team. You don't have to be an expert to take part, and you can bird from your back garden if you wish. To join us, you do need to set up an eBird account if you don't already have one, and register as an individual birder on the Global Birding website. Alongside your name, just write Casual Birder Podcast Team. Further instructions can be found on the website, globalbirding.org. Also, please sign up to my team email list, so I know that you want to be part of the team and I can keep you informed of any updates and ideas for promoting the event. You can find that at bit.ly/Global Big Day Team, or one word. It's also World Migratory Bird Day on May the 8th. Migration is a really challenging time for birds that are moving to their breeding grounds, and they also face being trapped and killed by humans along the migration routes. As part of the Global Big Day, we're raising funds for BirdLife International to help tackle the illegal killing of these birds. If you'd like to donate to our fundraiser, please visit justgiving.com/fundraising/Casual Birder. You can find all of this information in the episode notes. We're almost at the 100th episode of the Casual Birder podcast, and I'm looking forward to celebrating it with you. I'd love you to tell me about your joyful moments when birding, whether of the birds you've seen or how birdwatching makes you feel. Send me a voice message or email. You can find the details on the contact page at my website casualbirder.com. And congratulatory messages are also gratefully received. They'll all be included in the 100th episode. Personal recommendation is a powerful way to help others find the show. If you enjoy what you hear, please tell a friend or give the show a shout out on social media. And if you do that, tag me. You can also help support the show by contributing to the show's tip jar. The easiest way to do this is to buy me a virtual coffee. Your donations help fund my production costs and are very much appreciated. And thank you so much to Matthew, who bought me a coffee this week. Thank you for your kind words about the show. Do keep in touch. Tell me about your sightings by leaving me a message on SpeakPipe or on the contact form on my website, casualbirder.com. And sign up for my newsletter, Casual Birder Weekly. Take a look at the episode notes for the links to these. Thank you to Randy Braun for designing the artwork for the show. The theme music is Short Sleeve Shirt by the Drones. Thanks to them for letting me use it. Check out their website at dronesmusic.net. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you'll join me again for another episode of the Casual Birder podcast.